Hey everyone, I'm Cary Smith and I'm sitting here with Amar Shah, and we're both with Client First Capital. And Amar, the topic that we have today actually is the topic came from one of our clients in a discussion that you had with the clients as they're trying to prepare for retirement. So why don't you just kind of share the question that they had for you, and then we will, then we'll talk about the solutions.
Yeah. So this was actually a potential client, right? So they're meeting us for the first time, and one of the questions that they had for us was, what are the expenses that most people underestimate in retirement, right? So what most people underestimate as total costs in retirement, right? And so that got me thinking. A lot of people believe that they're set for retirement, and then you could have these unexpected events or unexpected costs, and that could maybe kind of derail some comfort level in retirement, right? But I think we came up with three of the biggest that I think we see kind of like over the last 20 years as a repeated pattern of things that happen in clients' lives that are unexpected costs, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we'll call this like the big three, right? And so like the first one is healthcare costs that Medicare does not cover, right? So
Yeah.
like, first of all, Medicare doesn't cover everything, right? Like dental, vision, uh, are things that Medicare does not cover. Now you can get supplement plans and you can get other things to cover some of those pieces, but dental work can get expensive.
Yeah, so there's a long list of things that Medicare doesn't cover, and too often people think, well, I have Medicare and I have a good Medicare supplement, I should be set, right?
Yeah,
And outside of the premiums that you have to pay for each of those, right, which can be a fair amount in and of itself, you've got you've got dental, as you mentioned, which is not covered. Now, sometimes dental can be covered under a Medicare Advantage plan, right? But it varies not just by state to state, but county to county. So it's hard to know if that's something you can rely on as well. And then Medicare doesn't cover long-term care. It covers some short-term care that's medically necessary following a hospital stay, but it doesn't cover long-term care if a person, Alzheimer's patients usually don't go to a hospital first, right?
right.
They just deteriorate to the point that someone needs to be there. And those expenses aren't covered either. And you've either, and because of the likelihood of those happening, you either need to set some funds aside to be able to pay for those or add long-term care insurance as one of your retirement expenses.
Yeah, and just to give a real life example, we've had a client, mid 80s, that she fell and she didn't break her hip, but she fractured a bone in her hip.
Okay.
And so with that, or her pelvic bone, excuse me, with that, she needed some care, right? And so the care company was charging this ridiculous amount, right? And so like there's this bridge, I would call it, between what you need and then what long-term care insurance would cover, right? And so in that bridge, that cost can add up real quick. And for 3 weeks, this cost of care was close to about 13 to 20,000.
Yeah.
So um, it is these things that people don't plan for, and then some things happen, and then they have this unexpected cost that they haven't factored into the plan.
Yeah.
What's number two, Carrie?
So number two is what I would call maybe lifestyle inflation. So the reason I call it lifestyle is when you retire, you spend more time on living your life as opposed to going to work and doing all these other things, right? So so now you're more impacted by lifestyle inflation. And so the more people want to do the same things you want to do, typically the more we see the cost inflate a little bit. And I've got a good example here, although this isn't technically inflation, but I live in Scottsdale. And in the summer months when it's 110 degrees, you can get a round of golf, including a golf cart, on a pretty nice course for about $50. But when the weather's nice, like it is so right now it's March, right?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful outside. Those fees can be upwards of $300, right? And so you're a lot of times the things that you want to do in retirement, travel and other things, you're more impacted by the inflation or the additional costs that you might incur with those.
Yeah. And it's not just your friends that you're hanging out with in retirement, but it's also your grandchildren, right?
That's
And
right.
most of the time, or sometimes, I should say, that your grandchildren probably don't live in as close proximity as where you're at. So that could include a flight to see grandchildren. That could include hotel stays or whatnot, or spoiling your grandchildren, right? Like that's like the big expenses, like taking them out to amusement parks or Disneyland and whatnot. And so
So
all
I got
those,
here's a quick good example. I was playing pickleball this last weekend,
okay,
and I was talking to a guy, and he and his wife are taking their grandkids to Disneyland in California for spring break. So they're probably there right now. We're in spring
right,
break now. And he was talking about, it's not the price of Disneyland that he worried so much, but the kids don't live here in Arizona. They're in other states and they're grandkids. And so, he said, when it's all said and done, this is going to be a pretty expensive trip, just to spend spring break in Disneyland. Right.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
but you don't want to miss out on those things either. Right. And you want to do them, you want to have those experiences, but people often will underestimate the cost of making those things happen.
absolutely, absolutely. And so lifestyle inflation, I think, is something that, from a planning perspective, that we put in your base expenses, but then there's this discretionary amount, and that
Yeah.
amount can easily grow at a faster rate than regular inflation. So
Yeah, that's right.
the last thing I would say is like longevity risk, right? And longevity risk, I think of this from a planning perspective in two ways. One is, as you're healthier, you can live longer, right? If you have the genetic lottery, then you can also live longer, right? Because of advancements of healthcare and stuff. But oftentimes, what we're seeing is that if there's a age difference between spouses, or if it's a second marriage or whatnot, uh, you could be seeing a financial plan in terms of longevity risk be 10 to 15 years longer than what actual lifespan that you may have.
Yeah, that's a good point, Amar. It's not uncommon for a man to be a few years older than their spouse. So let's say 5 to 7 years, 5 years difference between my wife and I. And at the same time, women typically outlive men by about 5 years. So you put those two factors together, and you're looking at probably a minimum of 10 years that one person might need to live off your financial plan longer than the other person, right? And so you can't just look at your longevity and what you think your lifespan will be. You have to look broader and look at the two of you and the possibility that one will outlive the other, maybe by 10 years or more.
Yeah. Yeah, I think these are the big three things that people underestimate their costs in retirement, right? And so I think, if we were to look at just other hidden costs that people that kind of look at, home maintenance, repairs, like maybe adjusting your house to age in place,
Mm-hmm.
right? That maybe moving from the bedroom on the second floor to moving to a bedroom on the first floor, redoing your bathrooms. If you live in Texas, your property taxes are fair market value. So like, as house prices go up, your property taxes also go up. And so, yeah, I think this I would say is the big three. But if you have anything else to add, please put it in the comments below. If you like these type of videos, please like and subscribe. It helps other people find our content who are just like you. And then we put out a newsletter, which is weekly or monthly. Sorry, we put out a monthly newsletter, just one a month, and you can subscribe to that on our website at clientfirstcap.com. Thank you, Cary.
Thanks, Amar.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.